everyone. This is Lonnie Salucha, and you are listening to PHLV Radio.
PHLV Radio.
Are you ready to travel? We got all the travel buzz here on Smart People Travel Wise with Alvin Adriano on PHLV Radio.
Hello and mabuhay, and it's so great to be back on the show again. It's a beautiful Tuesday here, and I would like to welcome you all back to Smart People Travel Wise. I'm your host, Alvin Adriano, CEO of Travel Wise International, and I would love to thank all of the viewers and listeners spending a few minutes of your day here with us. It's going to be a great show, and I can't wait to bring out Consul General JV of the Consulate Office in Washington, D.C., my hometown, and he's just an amazing person to work with. But before I do, let me remind all of our viewers, if you are watching this live, please hashtag live. And if you're watching this on the replay, the hashtag replay. Let us know where you're watching from, and we want to make sure we acknowledge all of our fans out there. You can also watch our show on Facebook and YouTube, and you can listen to the show on Amazon Fire, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Or even better, you can download the app PHLV Radio, available on all iOS and Android devices. So a little snippet of or summary of what Smart People Travel Wise. It's a new platform to educate the modern traveler with exciting new updates, inspiring destination, and of course, all the possibilities to make your dream vacation reality. So I do want to recognize everybody who's watching out today. I know it's a beautiful Tuesday here in DC, but yes, wherever you are, just drop it in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. So this is our very second episode, and today we're going to talk to ConGen and get an idea of how the pandemic has affected the Philippine economy and tourism. Tourism is an important sector for the Philippine economy. In 2019, the travel and tourism industry combined for 12.7% of the country's GDP. Good travel and tourism policies enabled millions of international visitors annually. And tourist arrivals to the Philippines slumped by 73% during the 7 months of 2020, giving the country 1.3 million visitors. There's always two sides of the story, and it's important that we understand how the sector plans to recover. Towards the end of the interview, we'll talk about the current travel restrictions and the travel restrictions that continually change, but we want to make sure that every Filipino and every person that plans to go to the Philippines has the most updated information when planning their trips. So I want to give you guys a little foreshadowing of how the Philippine economy has changed or adapted. Just to let everyone know, the Philippines is the most dynamic economy in the East Asia Pacific region. With increasing urbanization, a growing middle class, and a large and young population, the Philippines' economic dynamics is rooted in strong consumer demand, supported by a vibrant labor market and robust remittances. Economic growth is expected to rebound gradually at the end of 2021 and beginning of 2022, assuming containment of the virus domestically and globally, and of course, with robust domestic activity bolstered by greater consumer and business confidence and the public investment momentum. Tourism outlook in the Philippines continues to grow. And as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to affect the industry, the Philippines' domestic tourism is likely to help the industry recover. Local tourism stakeholders adapting to the crisis, understanding travelers' preferences, and providing a robust online service would propel its road to recovery. The current Build program of the administration has greatly improved infrastructure and transport connectivity, while the ease of doing business coupled with a facilitative environment for investors has boosted both visitor and investor confidence in the Philippine tourism. Here to discuss with us today is Consul General Jose Victor Chan-Gonzaga from the Consulate Office in Washington, D.C. But let me give you a brief bio on ConGen Chan-Gonzaga. So Consul General J.V. Chan-Gonzaga is currently the Consul General of the Philippines in Washington, D.C., where he has been serving in his role since 2020. He is a career member of the Philippine Foreign Service, holding the rank of Chief of Mission. And from August 2012 to January 2015, he was the Executive Director of the Department of Foreign Affairs, Office of Legal Affairs, DFA-OLA, while concurrently directing the division dealing with economic and social cultural treaties. He has served at the DFA Office of Legal Affairs and the Office of the United Nations and other international organizations, as well as the Philippine Permanent Mission to the World Trade Organization in Geneva from May 2011 till July 2012. He previously served as a second and then first secretary at the Philippine Mission to the World Trade Organization from 2004 until 2010. Mr. Chan-Gonzaga earned a master's degree in law from Columbia University as a Fulbright Scholar in 2003. He also has a Juris Doctor and Bachelor of Arts degree from Ateneo de Manila, and he is super devoted to the Philippine people, especially the ones under his jurisdiction. He's an innovative leader who has influenced operations and has been a pleasure to work with alongside in multiple projects. So please smash those heart buttons and give him a well-deserved thank you for being here today with us. So let's welcome Consul General J.V. Chan-Gonzaga.
Hi, Alvin.
Hello po, how are
And
you?
hi, everyone. Magandang hapon and good noon, I guess, to those in the other time zones. And good morning to Hawaii.
Yes, I know. It's a beautiful day here in Washington. It's about time it's got warm. So
Yeah,
I'm so
that's
happy that everyone's out and enjoying the heat. But yeah, what's going on in your office right now? I know things are starting to get busy with people renewing passports, but what's your consular office and the embassy doing or dealing with right now?
Well, we're basically almost back to pre-pandemic consular services, except for legalization, which is now under the Apostille Agreement, and most of our legalization services are suspended. But basically, all the consular services are back. Obviously, the important ones are passports, passport renewals, and of course, in the last year, the issue of dual citizenship, because of the travel restrictions that has made it necessary for some people to reacquire Philippine citizenship. The only difference, I think, between our services now and pre-pandemic is really the level of slots that or clients that we're able to accommodate at any given day, because the new normal now requires the appointment system. Mm-hmm. So essentially, we have had to cut back on the number of applicants. But I think we're trying to ramp up our levels of services, and we're hoping to be able to approximate pre-pandemic levels at some point in the near future, particularly as the pandemic stabilizes here in the US and as more people get vaccinated.
Well, thank you. I mean, yeah, it seems like there's going to be a lot of changes and new operational initiatives for the consul and all the embassies. So I'm really thankful for you finding a few minutes of your busy schedule to chat with us and just get to know more about what's going on in the embassy. I talked about your bio, and it's filled with moments of dedication and passion. But could you share to our viewers what motivates you to support Filipinos through your service?
Well, I've always wanted to be a diplomat, and I actually say that this last year has really been a blessing. I mean, most of my career have been devoted to multilateral negotiations. As you mentioned, I used to be with the Philippine Permanent Mission to the World Trade Organization. So most of my career has really been in multilateral negotiations. I also did quite a lot of UN work when I was in the Home Office before I went to Geneva. And when I came here to Washington, D.C. for the first 5 years, you mentioned I assumed as Consul General only in 2020, but I'm actually at the tail end of my tour of duty here in Washington, because for the first 5 years, I was the economic officer of the embassy. I served with Ambassador Quisha in the beginning, and then, of course, obviously with Ambassador Romualdez in the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the most meaningful and fulfilling roles that I've ever had in my 20-something career in the Philippine Foreign Service is really in the consular section. It's really been a great opportunity and a great honor to be able to provide all the assistance that our kababayans need on the front lines of Philippine diplomacy, and particularly in the last year with the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's really an experience that I honestly will not exchange for anything that I have done so far in my foreign service career.
No, it's amazing. Yeah, like you mentioned before, the pandemic at first, there was a lot of bad connotations, but during a crisis, you really get to find innovative ways to improve services, to find ways to reach kababayans. And I think it's really important that although there was a lot of negative impact, there was also a lot of positive impact, which also allowed us to find new ways to approach different problems. You mentioned that you were previously an economic director in the embassy, and you received your degree from Columbia as a Fulbright Scholar. How did your studies in economics help you prepare for your assignment as Consul General Economic Director?
Well, when I took up my master's at Columbia, that was already like I was already almost 8 years, 9 years in the Philippine Foreign Service at that time. And in those first 8 years of mine, my career had been dedicated to international trade and international economic relations and international economic law. So that's why when I went to Columbia, I made a mental effort and a conscious effort to take up mostly economics and international trade and international economic law in Columbia. And that really served me well, particularly with the 6 years I served as Philippine negotiator in the World Trade Organization. I also coordinated the ASEAN services negotiators at that time. So it really served me well. But I think what I just wanted to mention also about my year in New York was that it was also really my first year to be away from the Philippines. It was my first year to live and, I was at that time study, and most people live and work, but I lived and studied in a foreign country. And that's where I think I realized the importance of the embassy or the consulate being there for our kababayans, being accessible. Obviously, I was a Philippine Foreign Service officer. I knew some people there, but I think I made mental note that it shouldn't be the case that any kababayan, whether or not they know someone in the consulate or they know someone in the embassy, should be able to feel at home when they're in the consulate or when they're in the embassy. And that's what me and my team here in Washington, D.C. have been trying to do, particularly over these trying last year with COVID-19 also looming large over our lives, really trying our best to make people feel at home when they are in the consulate and when they're processing their applications for passports, dual citizenship. And that's why we've also been really reaching out to people on social media. We've been celebrating Philippine Christmas, both on social media and of course here in person in the consulate for those who are personally doing their transactions. And I hope that, that's something that what was really felt by many of our consular clients. And I see that in many of the feedback forms that we get from them. I know it's, and we can talk about this later, it's frustrating sometimes, the appointment system, the new normal of having to have an appointment before you can do your transactions. But we hope that after all the frustration of trying to get that difficult slot for an appointment, that as they get here, as they are welcomed by our colleagues downstairs, as they are processed and as their transactions are completed, that they feel the warmth and the hospitality that we're always known for.
No, I totally agree with what you're saying. I believe that all the embassies and all the consulates have made a trying effort to make it more easier accessible for all the Filipinos in their area. And I see everything that we've evolved to. And that's why I say it's important to realize the opportunity that we had during the pandemic, because it really showed us how we can help and support the Filipinos in America and what our service is to them. So I really commend you and all the consular office for everything you've done to make the transition. Even though there's a lot of bumps down the road, we've done our best to help as many Filipinos as we can. I really wanted to touch up on your Fulbright Scholar. I know you didn't really mention, but I don't want to downplay that. And for all the viewers who don't know what the Fulbright Scholar is, it's a U.S. student program that provides grants for individually designed study research projects. The program facilitates cultural exchange through direct interaction of an individual basis in the classroom, field, home, and routine tasks, allowing the grantee to gain an appreciation of others' viewpoints and beliefs, the way that they do things and the way they think. And I think that's really important because, like you mentioned before about being a foreign national in the U.S. and studying, there's a lot of views and perspectives that you gathered and gained, which became very, very influential in how you ran the consulate and how you've managed to approach a lot of the different issues going on, especially in the pandemic. So I really, really give you tremendous appreciation for everything I've seen and you've done in my hometown, Washington, D.C. So thank you very much.
No, thanks, Alvin. I think that's. I just wanted to add and to share that if there's one thing, the Fulbright year. My relationship with the United States, if I can share a personal story, really goes longer way back into my childhood because my mother was a language coordinator for Cebuano for the United States Peace Corps in the Philippines. So I grew up with US Peace Corps volunteers going in and out of our house or our homes.
Wow.
Many of them, became like family members over the years. So that's a foundational, I think, that's a foundation of my relationship with the United States and with Americans. But I think the Fulbright experience in New York and in Colombia and, living there and studying there really reinforced that. And I'm happy to highlight that because the Fulbright is really one of that important bridge between the Philippines and the United States. And there's just like thousands of Filipinos who have come here, studied here, been trained here, learned here, and then go back to the Philippines and make a difference. And that's important to highlight because this year, as you know, is the 75th year anniversary of the formal establishment of diplomatic relations between the Philippines and the United States. We're celebrating that with a lot of events, and I hope that is not lost on our kababayans, both those who are still Filipinos and both those who are Filipino Americans. And this is something that I always remind also dual citizens whenever I administer the oath of allegiance to them as they reacquire Philippine citizenship. That for the last 75 years, and hopefully for the next 75, next 100, 150 years, that community of Filipino Americans, you, Alvin included, you guys are really the bridge, that concrete bridge between our two countries, who daily in your lives, whether it's extraordinary or ordinary, in your communities, in your schools, in your workplaces, you are daily, enhancing, strengthening, nurturing that relationship, that partnership, that alliance, that friendship between the Philippines and the United States. So, and the Fulbright is a critical component of that, as many Filipinos come here to learn and go back to the Philippines to make a difference.
Yeah, it's amazing how much both countries have made an impact on each other, and it's continuously growing. And in our last interview, for any viewers who weren't able to watch our interview with Consul General Cato from New York, we really touched on the Philippine-American alliance that has, like ConGen talked about, the 75 years that we're really celebrating this year. I do want to touch up on the fact that, we talk about supporting Filipinos and how we can help, especially now that visibility and exposure has been truncated to social media, to online presence. And me and you are friends on Facebook. And I really see you visiting a lot of Filipino-owned business throughout the DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And I think it's really important for you and for everyone to understand how important it is visibility and exposure is now. Well, once we were in the pandemic, but now after the pandemic, because we're on the road to recovery. How important is it to you to support Filipino businesses? And is there any advice or resources that you can share to unite the business owners with the community?
Well, it's absolutely important. I think that's the bottom line. And let me just say that I think, what I've been doing is partly, I think, still a hangover from my being Minister for Economic Affairs for 5 years.
Yeah.
During my tenure there, aside obviously from trying to enhance, U.S. investments of multinationals in the Philippines, what had been very important to me also was a food diplomacy component in the work that we did. And we did a lot of food diplomacy activities at that time when I was a Minister for Economic Affairs. And let me just share that two of my dreams when I first started in Washington in 2015 was for Jollibee to come to the DMV area and to have a Pinoy food truck. And I'm happy to say that after 6 years, as I prepare to go home to Manila, those two dreams have been fulfilled. There's Jollibee in Wheaton and there soon will be Jollibee in North Virginia. And then there are a couple of Filipino food trucks already. And one of them will actually be here in the embassy a couple of weeks from now. And please watch our Facebook account for that announcement. But anyways, I agree with you completely, Alvin, that we need to support not only Filipino restaurants or Filipino groceries for that matter, but really Pinoy entrepreneurship. Yeah. And that's why we have been very supportive of the Philippine American Chamber of Commerce. We always try to reach out to all kinds of entrepreneurs, including travel advisors like you and your sister, and of course at the height of the pandemic, we focused also on the Filipino restaurants. Well, obviously, one side to make sure that they continue to be going concerns, but secondly, really also to ensure that there continues to be cultural ambassadors of the Philippines, and food is really just a great cultural ambassador. We've seen that's been proven time and again, and I think that's why we considered it vitally important to make sure that we work together with them. And I'm happy to share that really at the height of the pandemic last year, last summer, we got together, and you can see this in our past Facebook posts. We got together with all the Filipino restaurants in the DMV area, brainstormed about to help them. We walked the talk, the embassy walked the talk for many of our events, for many of the occasions like Thanksgiving and Christmas. We ordered from these restaurants just to be able to contribute to them. And we have been promoting them also among our clients. We have a Filipino restaurant directory in the consular building. So when clients who are from South Carolina, North Carolina come and asks our colleagues where to eat Filipino food, we're able to provide them that. We've reached out to businesses, to U.S. corporations who I worked with in the past and requested them to, when they have employee meals program, to consider many of these restaurants. Now, I don't want to sort of magnify our contribution here, but I would just say that we're happy that after 1 year of the pandemic, all the restaurants that were open in March of 2020, except for one, continue to be operating today here in the DMV, and quite a few of them are really doing well. And in fact, a couple had also just opened, like Pogi Boy, which opened almost at the height of the pandemic as well. So, and I think there are very few things in the world that bring Filipinos together, and one of that is really food. So I think that's also been something that we've tried to unify our community here and rally them around Filipino restaurants, about Filipino food, which thankfully has been slowly being mainstreamed into the U.S. palate and into the U.S. Economy. And let me just end by also drawing attention to, we have this Proudly Pinoy Saturdays features in our Facebook account that features stories about Filipino entrepreneurs and Filipino businesses. And we feature their businesses, not only food, but other sorts of entrepreneurial endeavors of Filipinos, both here in the United States under our jurisdiction, as well as in the Caribbean. And I would really invite our friends and kababayans to look at that feature, because it really are inspiring stories, and it shows you how resilient Filipinos are, and how just the Filipino spirit is completely awesome and fantastic and unbelievable.
No, I totally agree. I mean, if your dream was just to have Jollibee in a Pinoy food truck, well, you've exceeded it, because we have a booming Filipino food atmosphere growing. And like you mentioned, Pogi Boy, there's Kaliwa, and down in the Wharf, there's just tons of Filipino places opening up. The Game Room, Auntie Boba's. So a lot of Filipino entrepreneurs. I really wanted to highlight that, because I think now it's more than ever. Filipinos have always been known as great workers, but now we have to move to the next level, to entrepreneurship, so we can create opportunities, jobs for other Filipinos, and still promote our own culture. You are right. Food, as a travel advisor, I know food is the universal language to a lot of people. Everyone finds culture through the food and cuisine that they eat, but also music. I was talking to on one of my last interviews with Kate and Neba. Music is also an underlying commonality in a lot of the cultures, because people love to sing. I know Filipinos love to sing. They always have the karaoke machine right by them. But there's an emotional connection you have with people. And I think that's really important to produce or highlight those type of things when we want to create partnerships with our neighboring countries or with the Philippines and US. So thank you again for mentioning that. It's really, really insightful ways that you've promoted Filipino entrepreneurs, restaurants, and anyone who's thinking about becoming a Filipino entrepreneur. Now, I do want to kind of change or pivot a little bit because there are some things that I do want to talk about as far as the pandemic. We all know that pandemic has created a lot of issues and restrictions that has really uncovered operational issues for every industry. But with every crisis, there is opportunity. So how has the pandemic allowed you the opportunity to discover new methods and operations inside the consulate office?
Okay, that's a really interesting question, and I'm not going to answer that directly because there is no direct answer. But let me just say, I guess first off, I know, and we've seen this in many businesses, especially in the private sector, that they have pivoted in such a way that they have really, become, that they've completely adapted almost in an excellent manner with the new normal. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, governments and public organizations are not as agile as private businesses. There are issues of accountability, issues of budget, issues of a lot of other constraints. And like many other government agencies, not only Philippines but really also all the world governments, it's been quite difficult to just completely pivot to the new normal for the consulate. For example, I know that there are certain issues with the appointment system, although I can explain some of the constraints that we have there and some of the reasons why the appointment system is structured in such a way or the structure is such a way. But we can look at that later on. But I just wanted to say that I think because of those constraints, what we have done really is just to pivot in terms of the personnel and in terms of the systems that we have. Now, when I assumed in 2020 in January, I told my colleagues, and I was supposed to be here 1 year only. I was supposed to go home last January. So I was just supposed to do 1 year. I was just supposed to do a quiet last year in Washington, D.C. and perhaps visit the Caribbean once in a while as we do our consular outreach. I'm just joking. But anyway, I had emphasized two things to them. One is accessibility, and two is contingency planning. Contingency planning is self-explanatory. Accessibility is really, I told them, because we are frontliners. We are first responders. And Alvin, I use these two terms when they weren't the fad to use these two terms about frontliners and first responders. Obviously, they existed, but they weren't the fad to use them. And then, a couple of weeks later, COVID-19 just turned everything upside down and it just turned all our lives into an entire chaos. Mm-hmm. And so, but I think those two priorities could not have been more vital over the last year. Because as first responders, as frontliners, we had to be accessible to our kababayans. Mm-hmm. And also contingency planning was very important. So what we've done really, Alvin, is that we don't have the budget to spend on new technology in order to adapt and pivot to the new normal in a quick fashion. But what we've really done was just really to tweak our systems and to tweak our processes to make them more efficient, to make them more effective, and to make them more accessible to the public. And I hope we've been able to achieve that in the last year.
No, it really shows in the testament of your dedication to provide help and support to Filipinos around the DC, Maryland, and also all the way down to the south to the Caribbean, like you mentioned. Those are the things that we started realizing the purpose of the consular and the embassy to provide support, not only in terms of visas and embassies, but just as along with the Stop Asian Hate. People don't realize how much they can use the consular and the embassy as forms of information to get justice or to just reach out and find out what's going on. It's not a place where it should be your safe refuge place. And you've made it a lot more accessible and easy for Filipinos to talk to. And I really appreciate everything, because I don't know how we would have survived if you weren't here in January 2020. So the transition is...
Can I just reinforce what you said? And this is really addressed to our kababayans as well as to my colleagues here in the consulate. One thing that I really wanted to change also, and as you highlighted, is really that notion that the consular team is only here for passports, for visas, and everything.
No.
We're here for a lot of other things, and really that's been highlighted and underscored over and over and over again this last year. And I hope that sticks in our minds as public servants, and that sticks also in the minds of our kababayans. And I always tell new arrivals that I'm able to speak to, don't think of us only when you have a problem. Think of us as your partners to make yourself successful here in the United States or there in the Caribbean, wherever you might be. And it's really more vital, particularly for the overseas workers who are not intending to be permanent migrants or to be permanent, citizens or residents in a particular host country.
Yeah, it's amazing. Again, a lot of people have found purpose and meaning in their jobs, in the organizations that they participate, and even more on the people that they count on, especially like your office and the embassy. So again, a lot of compliments of what you guys have done, and to transition the perspective of how Filipinos view the services of the consular. So yes, I know we were I want to touch into your economic background, and I really wanted to give our viewers a little bit more insight about the real economic growth. COVID, or the pandemic, has really challenged the economy in Philippines with the strict community quarantine measures that was imposed by the country. The growth contracted significantly in 2020, driven by significant declines in consumption and investment growth, and exacerbated by the sharp slowdown in exports, tourism, and remittances. The Philippines tourism industry is a significant source of the country's GDP throughout the years. And in terms of tourism sector, GDP share in Asia, the Philippines share was one of the highest ranking. In the past year, though, the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted the tourism market supply chain, resulting in an economic downturn for the Philippines. This year, the Philippine tourism industry has created major strategies and plans for domestic traveling in the new normal to keep tourism alive and going with the closure of international borders. So everyone's talking about the travel restrictions, and I know many people are confused, but I understand really the policies and believe that we can be a little bit more patient. I know everyone viewing or listening is praying for Philippines, but could you chat a little bit on how important it is to contain the pandemic and to ensure the safety of our Filipinos in the Philippines?
Yeah, whenever I try to explain the travel restrictions to kababayans, or more importantly to foreigners who have been wanting to visit either as tourists or as businessmen, as potential investors, what I try to emphasize, in order just to make it plain and clear, is that really in the end, what really the government is just trying to do is just to ensure the public health and safety of Filipinos. That's the non-negotiable bottom line.
Yep.
I mean, it's easy to second guess policymakers. It's easy to make comparisons. It's easy to say that why is this country allowing this, and why are you not allowing this, or why is this your policy while many other countries have these policies. But I guess in the end, we just have to trust those who are tasked with the responsibility of protecting the health and safety of Filipinos. And we all know, and everyone from President Duterte all the way down to the cabinet secretaries and to the bureaucrats have been very clear that that the challenge from day one has really been that balancing act between keeping your borders open and keeping your people safe.
Yep.
And that's just been the challenge. And unfortunately, those travel restrictions have had to stay. I mean, it's so difficult to say that why are other countries not closing their borders? I mean, the health systems are not the same, the population density is not the same, and there are a lot of other factors that just have to be considered. And most of our health policymakers just have to go by the numbers. And when you see the numbers going up, obviously you're not going to have much policy leeway except to impose more restrictions. But I think we just wanted to reassure everyone that there is that sensitivity. Everyone's conscious about that. Everyone, recognizes and realizes the importance of family reunification, of reopening the economy, of reopening the tourism sector. And I think we're just slowly building up to that. We've seen that. We've seen that in December, when we've almost completely reopened with the reinstitution of Balikbayan, with the allowance of all the visa categories. And then obviously because of the spike over the March and April period, we've had to scale back a little bit. But we're optimistic, and we are confident that, especially now with the vaccines coming in and with the vaccination program ramping up, hopefully, that we will be able to ease many of the restrictions as soon as possible.
No, I totally agree. I think there's two sides to every story, and to give perspective to all the Filipinos in America, the Philippine government its priority is to take care of public health. And I think no matter what our opinions are, we have to understand what the goal is for the Philippine government. And I would also challenge every Filipino American who has the opportunity to write to their congressman. I know Philpro, a nonprofit organization that's backed by the DFA, we've been heavily reaching out to our organizations and to our networks to highlight the hashtag Moderna Vax to Philippine campaign, which is writing to your lawmakers to expedite the distribution of vaccinations from US to America. I think it's about 4 million doses of the Moderna virus, which would heavily help the current situation for the people and the economy. And so for all of that, I think it's really, really important that we understand what the government's priorities are. And, we do want tourism to open back up, but not at the risk of hurting Filipinos. They just don't have the infrastructure yet. And what we can do to help is just wait a little bit longer until everything clears up and they're ready to go. So thank you so much for sharing your insights about. Oh, did you want to say more?
Yes, can I just add three things, quick things. One, Alvin, is that this campaign you're referring to, whenever I administer the oath of allegiance to dual citizens, I also bring that up. And I'm always happy to hear back from a couple of them to say that yes, we've sent in the letter as you requested. So that's really heartwarming. Secondly, I think I also wanted to emphasize that as the template letter emphasizes, we're basically just asking for the early delivery of vaccines that we have purchased and will pay for. It's not about asking for free vaccines. We've ordered and we will pay for these vaccines, and all we're asking for is the early delivery of these orders so that they will make a difference in the vaccination program and in the reduction of COVID cases in the Philippines. And lastly, I just wanted to reinforce what you had said about working together. Whether it's about the travel restrictions, whether it's about the appointment system, whether it's about the requirements for dual citizenship, my plea to all our kababayans is always just, please be patient, be cooperative, and let's work together. I've seen that make a difference in the lives of many. There is no point getting publicly frustrated and publicly angry, because it's not going to help you, it's not going to help us, it's not going to help things. What we just need to do really in the end is work together. And that is a promise I have made and my team has made to all those under our jurisdiction. We just all need to work together, and we can help them, whatever their problems might be, whatever their situations might be.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Like you mentioned before, there's nothing we can do right now. The government has to make decisions based on the numbers, based on the COVID cases that are quickly rising. But hopefully, what we can do now is continuously support the Philippines and its tourism. And when it does open, that we're all going to come home, or we'll help the recovery of the tourism, because people don't really understand the numbers behind all of this. And I just kind of wanted to put this out there so they understand how much money that we're talking about here. So the Philippines lost about 400 billion in tourism revenue in 2020 due to the sudden fall in tourist arrivals amid the COVID pandemic. And the DOT, Department of Tourism, reported that international tourist receipts in the first quarter of the year declined by 85 billion pesos, 36% lower than the revenues in the same period last year. But in September 2020, the Philippine conglomerate San Miguel Corporation signed a U.S. Contract for 15 billion with the government to build Manila's second aviation gateway, designated to accommodate up to 200 million passengers annually. And this is in the Bulacan province, 30 minutes away from the capital. The Build, Operate, Transfer project, covered by a 50-year concession deal, calls for the new airport to decongest the over-congested Nino Aquino International Airport. So, in light of all this, how will this new development and how will this project help attract more visitors in the future to the Philippines?
Yeah, I think there's quite a number of positives that have come out of COVID. Actually, this Zoom thing is one of them. I know it's existed before, but we didn't really realize its power and its potential until after COVID-19. And it's really helped us reach a lot more of our kababayans and our constituents over the last year. But going back to your question, Alvin, I think, as I said, one of the positives of the pandemic was that it has allowed the build program of the government to continue.
Yep.
And in some cases, it had allowed it to even be, advanced in schedule, because during the extreme lockdowns last year, there was little traffic, there was little distraction, and there was little disruption in the construction work that continued to go on even during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we're hoping that as soon as things settle down, as soon as the economy and tourism reopens, that all the infrastructure that has been continuing to be built over the last couple of months and over the last year will be there, ready to accommodate hopefully the surge in terms of arrivals and everything. And yeah, and I know that many of the local government units have also been preparing for the new normal and for the reopening of the economy, and even the hotel industries have been really working a lot on digital transformation. So I'm sure that the Filipinos and the Filipino economy will continue to be resilient. And as the tourism sector and as the economy reopens at some point in the near future, sooner, hopefully, rather than later, then everyone will be ready for hopefully a quick recovery.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of things haven't gone on, there's a lot of upgrades to all the local airports so they can take on new tourists, not just focusing on the normal Boracay, El Nido, Luzon, but finding opportunities to open up to other provincial areas that need that tourism dollars. So I believe, yeah, like you keep mentioning, there's a lot of positives that happened because we were able to build the infrastructure to take on more tourists, to be able to open up our borders and show people what the beauty is of Philippines. Because normally a lot of people stay in the same places over and over again. But I think now, after this year and a half, people will be more willing. And I've seen the domestic tourism numbers. I mean, I think it's about 49% of Filipinos have started discovering new provinces they never saw before. So that's really, really a good thing, because that's just going to bring more inspiration and more opportunity for Filipinos to recover safely from this pandemic. I do want to also mention that a lot of sectors within the travel space will also create more opportunities, jobs, and a high chance of success. And I've really heard a lot of rumblings of increased business tourism, also focusing on the leisure market, but also new trends as ecotourism, cultural tourism, adventure travel, cruise and event, and medical tourism. There's just a wide ranges of categories that will definitely increase the visibility of the Philippines to a variety of lifestyles and travelers. So I'm really excited to see what will happen in the future, because Philippines has never been in the bucket list type of destination for American travelers. But I think in 2022, that will change dramatically with everything that we've built with the Build program, being able to improve all of our airport facilities. And then the fact that PAL have direct flights from 5 or 6 different cities now. So yeah, I really hope and support everything that the Department of Tourism, the embassy, and the consulate has done to promote Philippines, to put it in better light so that we can help the recovery for our kababayans. Now, what I do want to talk about is you mentioned about how operations are slowly getting back into normalcy. I've overheard that in June 11th, Washington, D.C. will be opening 100% throughout establishments, food, bars, whatever. Will the operations in the consulate also change? Will it also go back to 100% during that time?
Well, basically, what will happen would be we will go to 100% staff complement because over the last year, we've tried to do, in accordance with guidance from the Department of Foreign Affairs in Manila, as well as some guidance from CDC and all the others. We've tried to do alternating or at least rotating teams so that if any team is exposed to a COVID case, then not the entire consular team will be affected. And this happened actually in December when we had to shut down towards Christmas because there was an exposure, although thankfully no one got infected, but there was exposure at that time. But what we're planning to do in June would be to really go back to 100% staff complement. So even those who are immunocompromised in the team would be coming back to work because they have been fully vaccinated as well. But in terms of services, Alvin, even with the rotating teams, we've been at 100% already in terms of the new normal operations, meaning the appointment system. So we've been fully operational in terms of the consular services. The only thing that will probably take time to getting back would be the whether or not to allow walk-ins. Mm-hmm. I think there are very few instances now that anyone's allowed to walk in. I mean, whether it's a doctor, the dentist, or even a restaurant where it's really full, you're not just gonna be able to walk in. That one I think will have to wait a little bit longer. But otherwise, all the services are fully operational. You just need to get an appointment. And let me just take this opportunity also to say that yes, we follow the appointment system very strictly, but let me just inform our kababayans, if they have an emergency, and we're very clear about this, if they have an emergency, a death in the family or a family member who is seriously ill, they can always just reach out to us and request for expedited appointment slot. We have certain slots reserved for those extraordinary cases. We're very sensitive and conscious of these emergency and urgent cases. So please do reach out to us. And let me also just take this opportunity to say that please reach out usually via email or via Facebook Messenger to my office. Please, we do not have a call center. So the telephone numbers are manned individually, and they're manned usually by frontliners who would not be able to answer them if they're doing frontline duties. So please use the emails or Facebook Messenger, and that one, I can guarantee you, every message will be returned or replied to. That has been our covenant since January 2020, and I'm happy to say that we've kept our end of the bargain there, and I will make sure that we will continue to be accessible that way. But yeah.
No, that's amazing. I reach you all the time on Facebook Messenger, so I can tell you from personal experience, they're very reachable on Facebook and by email. So if anyone has any issues, I definitely recommend reaching out to them on those platforms. We're getting close to the end of the shows, so I just wanted to, reconfirm. A lot of people may still have questions on the current travel restrictions. So I know this is something that you say all the time. But for all the viewers and listeners, can you just mention what the travel restrictions are currently?
Yeah. Thank you, Alvin. And thanks for this opportunity. And thanks to you and PHLV for this opportunity to reach more of our kababayans, although we're trying to reach them in as many platforms as possible. So I guess, the easiest thing to remember is that generally foreigners are not allowed to enter the Philippines. Mm-hmm. And when I say foreigners, we've also been very clear about this, that includes, unfortunately, former Filipinos who have not been able to reacquire Philippine citizenship. So that's a general rule. Mm-hmm. Now, what are the exceptions? And these are very narrow. Basically, one, and thankfully, the Balikbayan program has been reinstated. So again, even if you're a former Filipino, considered a foreigner, but if you qualify under the Balikbayan program, then you would be able to enter the Philippines. And how do you enter the Philippines? You enter the Philippines by presenting either your Philippine Statistics Authority birth certificate or your old Philippine passport, even if it's expired, or an old stamp on your U.S. passport admitting you into the Philippines via the Balikbayan program. Now, the Balikbayan program does not extend only to the former Filipino, but that extends also to the foreign spouse of the Balikbayan, as well as the children of that Balikbayan, regardless of age. So even adult children would be covered. But the only caveat there is that the foreign spouse or the foreign children must be traveling together with the Balikbayan. They cannot be joining the Balikbayan in the Philippines or going ahead of the Balikbayan. They must be traveling together. Now, for those who do not qualify under the Balikbayan program, your alternative would be to get a 9A visa. That's the tourist visa that normally is issued to foreigners. And who is qualified for that? Basically, those who are joining their spouses in the Philippines. Unfortunately, they will require a travel exemption from the Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs. So what will happen now would be they will have to email the visa section of the embassy or any of the other consulates in the United States to get the requirements and the process for that. We do not have any more what we called before automatic issuance of visas for foreign spouses or foreign children. They will need to coordinate with the consulate or with the embassy.
Perfect.
And then obviously dual citizens are considered Filipino, so they can go home anytime.
Perfect. And you're right. You know, reaching out and providing this information to all the Filipinos all across the world is very, very important. I also want to mention and highlight if any Filipinos need information, they can always visit the embassy's website. It's www.philippineembassy-usa.org. And I'll go ahead and put it in the comments. So if you ever need to find out information, you can go there. Or I also have a Facebook group, Balabagan Travel Wise, where I share information, updates from the Consul General and from the immigration in Philippines or from the airlines, that we can always make sure that you are not frustrated. I know the anxiety of ever-changing travel restrictions, but we tried to provide you the most up-to-date and accurate information as possible. So we'll go ahead and drop those in the comments so that all of the viewers and listeners can connect to those links. All right. So ConGen, I know we're running out of time, and I really thank you for spending your time here with us and sharing your insights, especially on the economy and then the current outlook of travel for the Philippines. Is there any final words or thoughts that you wanted to share with the viewers or listeners?
Yes, Alvin, thank you. No, basically just a word of thanks. Word of thanks to our kababayans, especially those under my jurisdiction here in the Southeast United States and in the Caribbean. I know that the last year has not been easy for many of our kababayans, whether it's about getting an appointment, getting home, canceled flights, etc., etc. But as I said, we just need to work together, and we will be able to get through this. And so thank you so much to all of them who have been patient, who have been cooperative, and who have been engaging with us and who have been in touch with us. And we really thank them from the bottom of our hearts. Secondly, thank you to our partners over these last years, whether it's a government agency in Manila, a government agency here in the US or in the Caribbean, or partners like yourselves, Alvin, Michelle, and many others like you, and the Filipino restaurants who have been working with us in continuing to promote our culture and food diplomacy. We really thank our partners, and I always say that without our partners, including Fil-Am leaders, community coordinators, without them, without you guys, we would not be able to do a fourth or a half of what we have been able to do for our kababayans over the last year, especially during the pandemic. And thirdly, Alvin, if you'll allow me, and if your viewers will allow me, really a big thank you to my team here in Washington, D.C. I could not have asked for a better team. At the height of the pandemic, they had been working 24/7, and I can personally attest to that. You text them, you email them at 2 a.m., they would be there, they would be responding, and they would be working for our kababayans, particularly at the height when we needed to repatriate cruise ship workers in the Caribbean, J1 fellows here in the United States, and so on and so forth. They have been an outstanding group of people who have been, great partners of mine as we made sure that we were there, accessible and working for all our kababayans who needed our help during these very trying times. So thank you again to you and to Johan and to the whole PHLV team for giving me this opportunity. I just wanted to say to our kababayans that, please continue to keep safe. And please remember that you do not need to engage the embassy or the consulate only when you are in trouble or when there are problems, but please continue to be our partners in enhancing and strengthening the community, the Filipino community here in the US and in the Caribbean, as well as in enhancing and strengthening the relationship with our host governments here in the US and again in the Caribbean.
Thank you so much, ConGen. I think that's a true sign of your leadership. Real great leaders praise their teams and the people that surround them to make them successful. I think one of the things that I really wanted to highlight is communication. I think communication now is one of the most important ways for our community to unite. Whether you're across the nation or all in Philippines, the ability through Zoom technology for us to share our thoughts, to find solutions to our problems, it's a team thing. It's a community thing. And I think the more that we uncover all of these issues, the stronger that the Filipino community will be. And I thank you for your leadership throughout these years. I hope your next assignment will be as fun-filled. And I hope to see you soon with that Filipino food truck. I was waiting for it last week.
Yeah.
I was so ready to get down and eat. But again, platforms like this were created so that we can share and highlight Filipino attributes, entrepreneurs, industries, or anything that we can do to support the Filipinos. I thank you so much for all the viewers and listeners who have spent some time with us. And I'm really excited to bring this show to the next level. Tune in next Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific time and 3 p.m. East Coast time and watch our great discussion for all those who are concerned about traveling to the Philippines. We're going to have a great speaker. He's an award-winning diving expert. He's an American who's lived in Philippines for over 12 years, and he's actually a dive resort manager in Anilao. So he'll be coming on the show next week and discussing about the different trends and vacation types in Philippines. And before I end today's show, I wanted to build up on what we were talking about volunteering and helping out the Filipino community. If you know someone who may be interested in volunteering some time in educating, inspiring, and creating opportunities for young Fil-Ams, please have them hashtag volunteer, and I will personally reach out to them. It's always our passion and to give back. And I urge the viewers to find the time to do so. There's nothing more enriching than being able to help your Filipino community. So if there's anything that we can do to continue the growth and the development of our community, please let me know. Again, my name is Alvin Adriano, CEO of TravelWise International, a Filipino-owned and operated travel agency that's been dedicated in serving the Filipino community since 1989. If you or any of your family or friends need help planning a vacation to the Philippines or anywhere in the world, please reach out to our experienced travel advisors at 301-248-8898 or visit our website at www.itravelwise.com. So we are dedicated to making all of our clients' dreams reality. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's show and our episode. Till next time, smart people travel wise. Yay!
Thanks, everyone.